Not too long ago, China's housing market experienced an unprecedented boom, with skyrocketing prices and a construction frenzy. But now the tide has turned and the market is facing a crisis of oversupply, debt, and government restrictions. The dramatic collapse has created ghost towns across the country, with many buildings being demolished or left unfinished. Meanwhile, many Chinese residents are being forced to live in temporary shelters, having waited years for homes they've bought but have never been built. In this video, we'll take a deep dive into the reasons behind this crisis, its wider impact on the economy, and what the future might hold for the nation's seemingly doomed housing market. Subscribe to Free Investing, and let's begin. First, let's start with the basics. A housing crash refers to a situation where property prices experience a sharp decline after reaching a peak or bubble. This can occur as a result of a gradual decline in prices or a rapid nosedive. Housing bubbles typically arise when excessive lending leads to homeowners taking on larger mortgages than they can afford, often due to predatory lending practices or a change in their economic circumstances. When property prices collapse, this can force homeowners to sell, which in turn increases the supply of houses on the market. China experienced a housing bubble in both residential and commercial real estate from 2005 to 2009, during which average house prices tripled. This was driven by a range of factors, including low interest rates, cheap credit for construction and property purchases, cultural factors that encourage home ownership, and limited access to foreign assets for Chinese investors. In Beijing and Shenzhen, home prices soared by 140% in just 5 years, and investment in residential property as a percentage of China's GDP tripled from 2% in 2000 to 6% in 2011. The same level that the U.S. housing market reached before its crash in 2007. Everything appeared to be going well for the Chinese, but in August 2021, indications of a potential collapse in the Chinese real estate market surfaced when reports revealed that Evergrande Group, the second largest property developer in China, had alerted the Guangdong provincial government about its precarious financial situation. The company, burdened with over $300 billion in debt, defaulted on payments and has since been forced to undergo a restructuring process. Part of the problem was that developers in China have, in the past, relied heavily on pre-selling homes, particularly apartments in large buildings and modern urban communities, in order to generate a source of steady cash flow. Coupled with massive borrowing, this practice enabled them to purchase more land and continue construction. However, many observers, such as The Economist, noted that in essence, the Chinese property market operated like a Ponzi scheme, where funds obtained from new investors were used to settle existing clients, leading to the market's eventual collapse. George Mangus, an associate at the China Center at the University of Oxford, stated that although the Chinese market is not exactly like Bernie Madoff's notorious scam during the global financial crisis, it is quite similar. Developers obtain massive amounts of funds from customers to finance upcoming construction projects, and this cycle persists until it grows to its present size. Mangus explained that it is not a classic Ponzi scheme in the asset management sense, but they use clients' funds to support the next project, making it the typical definition of a Ponzi scheme. Subsequently, China's president made the decision to clamp down on this reckless lending, which in turn deprived developers of their financing. When the housing market collapsed, it was revealed that developers had utilized the funds they had already received for incomplete homes to purchase additional land or projects, leaving them unable to complete the homes they'd already sold. The Chinese government also faced allegations of intentionally triggering a housing market collapse due to fears that numerous middle-class households could no longer afford homes in several cities. And now, China's real estate market is currently undergoing an unprecedented downturn, with investment in real estate development falling dramatically. This is very worrying for the Chinese economy as a whole, as the housing industry accounts for between 20% to 30% of China's GDP and has been promoted as a crucial driver of the country's remarkable growth in the past. However, due to lockdown measures, decreased confidence, and stringent government regulations, many developers have come perilously close to bankruptcy and defaulting on their debts. As a result, the industry experienced its worst year in recent memory in 2022, with sales figures from the country's top 100 developers at only 60% of the level attained in 2021. Construction across the country came to a standstill, and buyers were left in an unfortunate situation. Many Chinese residents had made agreements with developers to exchange their land for new high-rise homes, but for some, almost 8 years on, they are still waiting for their new homes, having moved out of their old properties long ago. Numerous villagers in China made agreements with a developer to exchange their land for new homes in towering high-rise buildings that would replace their farms. The developer promised the construction would take 3 years, but after 8 years, the villagers are still waiting, with nowhere permanent to live. The city of Zhengzhou is a stark example of the crisis, with evidence of unfinished developments visible throughout the city, resembling a ghost town. It is the most severely impacted area in a country experiencing significant housing market troubles that could affect the entire economy. A small community in temporary accommodation has been set up nearby, providing shelter for the elderly and vulnerable residents while they wait for their homes to be built. Meanwhile, the younger and more capable villagers are forced to rent accommodations elsewhere. In an interview with Sky News, a single mother who lost her job in the pandemic and was widowed 3 years prior said, "We have no idea how many more years we have to wait. We just have to wait patiently. The developer does not have any money. The house cannot be built." The remnants of people's shattered lives are visible everywhere outside of the city, too. Major highway construction was started, but now has been stopped midway and no one has cleared the rubble. With unfinished, unsafe homes, some people were already paying mortgages and others moved into the incomplete blocks with nowhere else to go. In protest, many withheld their payments and took to the streets. The government responded with a stimulus package and eased restrictions, emphasizing the need to restart stalled developments. While some construction has resumed, it seems that not all of it has, and some people believe the developers are sending only a few workers to maintain the illusion of ongoing construction. Maintaining a thriving housing market is vital for China, though, as for many Chinese households, their home is their most valuable asset. In a People's Bank of China survey of urban households conducted in 2019, it was found that housing made up 59% of households' total assets, while mortgage loans accounted for 12% of total assets. These numbers are similar to the United States in 2008, on the brink of the subprime mortgage crisis, and Japan in the 1980s before its real estate bubble burst. Some experts estimate that the real estate sector and related activities accounted for 29% of China's GDP, equivalent to both Ireland and Spain before the global financial crisis. In an effort to stabilize the property market, the Chinese government has implemented measures such as reducing interest rates on mortgages, easing down payment requirements, and relaxing purchase restrictions. The depressed property market has also led some banks to adopt unconventional measures, such as offering mortgages that allow people to pay off loans until they reach the age of 95. According to several state media reports, some banks in cities including Nanning, Hangzhou, Ningbo, and Beijing have extended the upper age limit on mortgages to between 80 and 95, enabling people age 70 to borrow with a maturity of 10 to 25 years. This new type of mortgage is called a relay loan, in which the borrower's children must continue the mortgage if the elderly borrower cannot repay. In previous rules issued by the banking regulator, the borrower's age plus the mortgage length should not exceed 70 years. However, the new terms have relaxed this limit. Nevertheless, borrowers must meet certain conditions, such as having their mortgages guaranteed by their children and ensuring that their combined monthly income is at least twice the monthly mortgage payment. With China's aging population, banks are seeking ways to adapt to changing demographics and keep the housing market afloat. However, Hong Hao, chief economist at Grow Investment Group, described it as a drastic measure and suggested that it could be a marketing gimmick to attract the elderly to pay mortgages for the younger generation. According to the International Monetary Fund, China's real estate crisis is far from over. Thomas Helbling, deputy director in the IMF's Asia-Pacific department, stated in a briefing that while recent policy measures from authorities are appreciated, additional action will be necessary to resolve the real estate crisis. This is despite a statement from Chinese officials stating that China's property market is generally operating smoothly and is not in a state of crisis. Shares of property developers such as Country Garden, Longfor, and R&F Properties have nearly doubled back in the end of last year, showing signs of recovery. Yet shares of once prominent companies like Evergrande, Shimao, and Sunac have been suspended from trading since March of 2022. Country Garden, China's largest property developer, reported a 96% drop in profit in the first half of 2022, demonstrating the severity of China's property crisis. Over 30 Chinese property companies have defaulted on international debt payments, with private developers issuing profit warnings. Reviving the economy post-lockdown is a critical challenge for China's ruling Communist Party, and as President Xi Jinping embarks on his third term as leader, it's one of the most crucial tasks at hand. The housing market poses a significant obstacle in this regard. Although stimulus measures seem to have provided short-term relief, they won't address the fundamental issue, which is a substantial housing bubble and a market susceptible to boom and bust cycles. The issue runs deep and has become systemic, while the Chinese people must bear the brunt of it.